Welcome to episode 64 of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. It's Monday again. It seems like that happens so quickly these days. But the good thing about Mondays is that there's a new episode of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. And if that doesn't make you happy, then I don't know what will. I hope y'all had a good weekend. It was pretty good here. Saturday morning, it was a little bit crazy because of the weather. It had rained all night the night before, and most of like those early morning hours. I think we even had some thunder, but I believe I slept through most of it, so I'm not real sure about that. But around 10 o'clock Saturday morning, I was sitting doing some research for an episode, and I got a notification on my phone that said that snow would be starting in the next 5 minutes. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Well, needless to say, y'all, it never snowed because, that's typical for us. But, y'all, the wind was something else. On Friday, I had gotten the boys to carry out an old air mattress out to the curb for trash pickup. But when I walked out on the front porch on Saturday morning, just to make sure and see if it was snowing or not, that air mattress was laying in my front yard right in front of like the hedges in front of the house. It's like, wow. And this was a really good quality queen size mattress, so it has some weight to it. And then a little bit later that morning, I left to go get Poppy and Bridget some bugs. It looked like the wind had blown trash all over the place. All I could get a picture in my mind of was, remember those old commercials back in the 70s? That Native American guy was looking at the camera with a single tear rolling down his cheek because all around him people had littered. I don't know. I think of the weirdest stuff lately, but anyway, that's how my brain works. Now, today we're going to be talking about a murderer who documented her feelings about the crime in her diary. And there's a lot to this story, y'all, so stick around.
It's Monday, and that means it's time for a new episode of Mystery, Murder, and Magic. And here's your host, Andrea Lee, and sometimes Alex.
Alright, y'all. So, by all accounts and appearances, Alyssa Bustamante seemed like the quiet, sweet teenage girl. Her teachers say that she was a good student and she maintained an A and B average. Friends say that she was amazing and loved by everyone who knew her. She was even active in her church's youth groups. But the Alyssa that everyone knew had an alter ego online, and that alter ego was very, very dark. Alyssa and her younger siblings came to live with their grandparents when Alyssa was only 8 years old. Alyssa's mom, Michelle, had a history of drug and alcohol abuse. Her dad, Caesar, was serving Tom in prison for assault charges. The kids' grandparents, Gary and Karen Brooke, thought it would be best if they took the kids in and raised them themselves, so they filed the paperwork, and soon the 4 kids were living with them. Well, soon after they gained custody of those kids, they moved from California to a quiet rural property in St. Martin's, Missouri. The home that they provided for the kids was a stable one, and that was something they didn't have in their earlier years. But as stable as their home was, in 2007, At the age of 13, Alyssa had tried to kill herself and spent 10 days in a psychiatric hospital there in St. Martin's. She was prescribed antidepressants, but she continued to cut herself and would often show her friends her scars on her arms. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Alyssa was a very different person online. Her tweets would often talk about her opposition to authority. And in one post, she had said that bad decisions make good stories. But it doesn't stop there. On YouTube and MySpace, she listed killing people and cutting as her hobbies. She even posted a video on her YouTube's channel of her trying to persuade her younger brothers to touch an electrified fence on her grandparents' property. She had even added the caption on that part of the video of, "This is where it gets good. We get to see my brothers get hurt." But all of that was just a foreshadowing of what was to come, and maybe even a cry for help. Alyssa's younger sister, Emma, was friends with a little girl named Elizabeth Olton, who lived 4 houses down from her. On October 21st of 2009, the little sister, Emma, walked down to Elizabeth's house and asked her to come over to play. At first, Elizabeth's mom said no because dinner was almost ready. But the 2 little girls begged Elizabeth's mom, so she finally gave in and told her to be back home by 6 p.m. That was around 5 p.m., so the girls had about an hour to play before Elizabeth needed to be back home to eat dinner. 6 o'clock rolls around, and Elizabeth doesn't show up, so her mom, Patty, knew that something wasn't right because Elizabeth was terrified of the dark. She called the Brooke residence. Karen told her that Elizabeth had never been there that day. So immediately, Patty starts calling the police to report her little girl missing. Well, police showed up almost immediately that day, and they called in other police departments to help and the fire department. By 10 that night, hundreds of people, including people who lived in their community, were searching for the little girl. Elizabeth did have a cell phone, and Patty told the police that she had tried to call that cell phone many times, but the calls just kept going to voicemail. Police contacted the cell phone provider, and an emergency ping was sent to Elizabeth's phone. 3 pings showed that the phone was in the woods that were located behind the Brooke home. That wooded area was very big, so police called in helicopters, cadaver dogs, and divers, but nothing or no one was found. Now, around this time, police decided they needed to talk to the last person who had seen Elizabeth, and that was Emma. Emma was only 6 years old at this time. Well, probably because she was afraid, or that's just my guess, Emma gave the police different stories of what had happened that day. At first, she told the police that she and Elizabeth had played for about an hour, and then Elizabeth walked home. Then she told the police that they were playing in the woods, and somehow she, as in Emma, had gotten stuck in some thorns, so she called out to her big sister Alyssa to come help her. But nothing that Emma told the police added up, and soon the police realized that the only child that lived with the Brooke family that wasn't accounted for during that time was Alyssa. Well, by now the FBI had been called in, and they decided to talk to Alyssa. She told them on the day that Elizabeth disappeared, she had skipped school, but she had no idea where Elizabeth was. Well, at first they really didn't think there was anything suspicious about Alyssa. Gosh, I don't know why I'm having a problem with that. But then later, when the agent took Alyssa for a walk through the woods, that changed. When the agent found a shallow hole, he asked Alyssa all about it, and she just simply said that she likes to dig holes. Now, okay, I have 3 kids, y'all, and they have dug random holes in the past when they were younger. So outside of the given circumstances of a child being missing, that isn't that odd. But she also added that she would bury dead animals in them. Okay, yeah, that's a little strange. I mean, were these just like dead animals that she had came across as she walked through the woods? Or did she actually kill them? And that thought had crossed the FBI agent's mind too. Now, the agents obtained a search warrant for the Brooks home, and what they found in Alyssa's room was alarming. There were a lot of writings and drawings on her bedroom walls. One of the writings said it was written in blood. It was written in blood. And the second time that it was written in blood is written in all caps. Now, Alyssa had also written a poem about cutting herself. Part of it read, "I cut to see the blood because I like it." This is a truly disturbed child. And she was fascinated with blood and cutting. And then on another wall, there was a drawing of a person with a slash mark on their neck and arms. And beside it was written the name Emma, the name of her very own little sister. But y'all, it gets even worse, and you wouldn't even think it could get worse, but what they found in Alyssa's diary was blood-chilling. Entries in Alyssa's diary talked about hurting people. In one entry, Alyssa talked about burning a house down with a family inside. In another entry, just a week before Elizabeth disappeared, she had written, "If I don't talk about it, I bottle it up. And when I explode, someone's going to die." But the very last entry in that diary was the day that Elizabeth disappeared. And it was perhaps the most damning evidence found. Alyssa had tried really hard to scribble through that last entry so it couldn't be read. But, investigators have their ways, and they were able to read it anyway. And it read, and this is a quote, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at ATM," which we know means at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, "oh my God, I can't do this" feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. Kind of nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now. LOL. And that's the end of that quote. She actually said it was amazing and quiet, enjoyable, and even added LOL at the end of that entry. I mean, how sick. That's probably one of the sickest things I've ever came across. But after that discovery, Alyssa was brought into the police department for questioning. She was accompanied by her grandma Karen. Now, last night I watched a video of the questioning, and it was really something painful to watch. In the beginning, Alyssa was very indifferent, and she gave short answers to Detective David Rice's questions. But it was her body language that was the most incriminating from just about the very beginning. When Rice asked what had happened to Elizabeth, her words weren't truthful, but her body was quivering. A lot of her body language suggested that she was trying to comfort herself and maybe even convince herself that what she was saying to the investigator was true. And in the beginning, she was very adamant about not knowing anything about Elizabeth's disappearance. She even referred to the story about her sister Emma getting stuck in thorns. After that, she talked about one of her brothers asking if she knew where Elizabeth was, but she didn't think much of it. And she said after that, she got ready to go to church for Wednesday night activities, and when they came back home shortly after 8, they found 3 sheriff department cars out there on their property. And Alyssa said at one point, at that point, she got ready for bed and she went to sleep. And at the end of that part of her story, she said, and that's pretty much it, which is referred to as an exclusion qualifier, and that's a term that investigators use. But what that means is that it's a method that people use to withhold certain information, but yet still answer a question truthfully. Unknown to Alyssa, her body language and the way she used words were being analyzed along with the words that she chose to use. In that part of the interview, Alyssa said that when she got home from school, she had gone for a walk in the woods. So Alyssa inadvertently placed herself in the same area that Elizabeth's phone had last pinged. Now, Detective Rice started digging in a little deeper to the details of the timeline of Alyssa's day on the day that Elizabeth went missing in hopes that he would get more details. Well, Alyssa would reveal more than she had during that first account of the day. She showed Rice on a map the trail that she followed and says that she had then, after she went down the trail, she hung out by the creek and then she went back home, and the total amount of time that she was gone was about an hour. Now, this time when he asked about what she did after she came home from church, Alyssa told the investigator or the detective that she was told that the deputies were there searching for Elizabeth because they couldn't find her. And when Detective Rice asked her about how that made her feel, she replied with, I didn't think it would happen. So she really only talked about her thoughts and not how the situation made her feel. She went on to say that she didn't think anything like that could happen around St. Martin's. When Detective Rice asked her what she knew about Elizabeth, she was very vague. She gave a general description saying that she was 9 years old, had came over to swim with them, that she was a girly girl, and she could be annoying. Then the subject of the holes in the forest came up with Detective Rice. When asked to tell them a little about herself, Alyssa says that she enjoys nature and animals and being outside. She also said that she gets bored very easily and that she's easily entertained. So digging holes is something she does to entertain herself. Now, one specific hole came up in the interview. When she says that she dug it on Sunday, she's unsure of what time. Then she says that on Sunday she had been at her mom's house and must have dug that hole after she returned home from visiting her mom. And at that point, Alyssa's mom or grandma adds that it was 6 o'clock Sunday evening that she had picked Alyssa and her siblings up from their mom's house, which put them returning home around 6:30. Now, Alyssa says that once she was back home, she took a shower and went to sleep. She didn't think she had actually dug the hole on Sunday after all. Well, she stumbles around with her words, trying to decide when she actually did dig that hole. After ruling out Sunday, she mentioned Saturday, but she was at her mom's day that day too. Then finally she decides that it had to have been dug on Friday because she had been home that day. On that Friday, school had been out, so she didn't get out of bed until sometime around noon. After she got out of bed, she decided to go outside, and while she was outside, she dug a hole. And again, she said she was bored and just wanted to dig a hole. But Detective Rice starts digging even more into her and wants to know more about this specific hole because it was different from the other holes that Alyssa had dug in the past. Now, at first, Alyssa just kind of plays it off by saying that she just digs whatever shape comes to mind. But then Rice starts lowering the boom on her and saying that basically that type of hole looks suspicious since they're looking for a missing person, and she agrees with him. Now, let me tell y'all about this hole that he's referring to. Y'all, it looks like a grave. You know, it's rectangle, straight lines, not just a random hole that a kid would dig. And when asked what she thought about that, meaning the grave-shaped hole being in the woods where a missing girl is being looked for, she dismissed it with, the timing for digging that hole was definitely not good. Well, from here, Rice starts laying on a little more pressure in an effort to make Alyssa understand that the truth will be found out by telling her that the FBI has equipment that can pretty much see what is in these holes in the ground. From here, he continues to apply a little more pressure. He asks if Elizabeth has ever went on those walks in the woods with her. Had she ever taken her on walks in the woods? But Alyssa answers with a simple no to those questions. Now, Rice can tell by her body language Alyssa's story is kind of starting to fall apart. So he asks her what she thinks happens to Elizabeth. And she responds with, I really don't think she would run away because she's 9. And the way they've been searching for 2 days, never found any sign of her. So I think that maybe someone kidnapped her or something. It's a terrible thing, but I don't know what else to assume. Rice then asks her if she knows of anyone that would want to take Elizabeth, and she replies with no, but there's a lot of cars that drive down that highway. Through more questioning, Rice continues to break Alyssa down. It's very interesting to me that the methods that investigators use to get through to a person. And then he point blank asks her if she had anything to do with Elizabeth disappearing, cause her disappearance, kill her, or know where she is. And Alyssa answered no to each of those questions too. And then they began talking about the search that the FBI did of Alyssa's house, and more specifically, Alyssa's room. Now, Alyssa starts by telling Rice that the FBI had found marijuana seeds and her medication in her room, but Rice is very quick to tell her that he doesn't care about any of that, and that's not what they're there about. He asks what the FBI took from her room, and Alyssa lists 2 or 3 items, but her grandmother quickly adds that they had given her a long list of what had been taken from Alyssa's room, and it was also her grandmother that mentioned Alyssa's diary had been taken by the FBI. And apparently, Alyssa didn't realize until right that very moment that the FBI had taken her diary, and you can almost see the oh shit expression come across her face. Now, Rice had been waiting for this very moment to confront her about the journal entry, and at this point, Alyssa knew she was SOL. Rice starts off by asking Alyssa if she thinks that the FBI went through the diary, in which she said that if they had collected it, most likely they had. But then Rice comes down hard on her. He talks about how technology can read through scribbled out notes, and how the scribbles of ink doesn't make the original writing go away. He also tells her that they want to find out what happened to the little girl, and you can almost visibly see Alyssa start falling apart. And from there, she starts giving short answers to Rice's questions. Rice asked her where she's at and where she is and Elizabeth is at, and Alyssa replies with, I don't know. And then Rice mentions that if whatever happened was an accident, they still need the truth, which is another tactic in hopes of, getting Elizabeth or Alyssa to talk, and it worked. Rice asks Alyssa if this was something that was planned out or an accident, to which she replies, it was an accident. Now, Rice already knew that what had happened to Elizabeth was not an accident, but by suggesting it, he did start getting Alyssa to talk. Now, Alyssa and her grandmother both start crying as Rice, asks her to tell him about what happened. Alyssa says that she went into the woods and found Elizabeth there, and she was alone. The two decided to hang out because it was a nice day. By this time, Alyssa was sobbing. She says that they were just messing around and Elizabeth fell and then she died. Alyssa says she didn't know what to do, so she burned the little girl. She was adamant about no one helping her, though. But yeah, to me, it's just a little hard to believe that a 15-year-old girl could carry this out on her own. And when the detective asked her how she burned her, she just said that she got a bunch of wood and started a fire. But y'all, we all knew, and Rice knew too, that it's way harder and takes a lot more than that to actually burn a body. Now, Alyssa more than likely said that she burned the body of Elizabeth in an effort to say, hey, there's no evidence left, but why would she do that? If it was an accident, especially, right? Now, Alyssa tries to retract her words about the hole being dug on Friday by saying that she had dug it that Wednesday, just before Alyssa came over. But she turned around immediately and said that hole had been dug on Friday, which was 5 days before Elizabeth went missing. But whether she dug it on Wednesday or Friday, premeditation had been established. In an effort to get Alyssa to give a truthful confession, Rice starts telling her that whether she had burned the body or not, an autopsy would show the cause of death, and again tells her that they need to know the truth. And then point blank, he asks Alyssa how she killed Elizabeth. But Alyssa says that she didn't kill Elizabeth, that Elizabeth died. Again, he asked Alyssa how Elizabeth died. And Alyssa stuck to the story that they were just messing around, and then Elizabeth fell back and hit her head. But then there's a sudden turn in the interview. Rice asked if Elizabeth's throat was cut, and her reply sent her grandmother into a breakdown of emotions. She had to leave the interrogation room. Yes, Alyssa had cut Elizabeth's throat. Now, let's think about this grandmother for a minute. She had taken Alyssa and her siblings in like 7 years before that, and then something like this happens. It shattered her world. I can't even begin to understand what that must be like. And I'm sure she knew that Alyssa had her problems because she did have that suicide attempt. And I know she had seen the inside of Alyssa's room. But I'm also sure that she didn't think that her granddaughter was capable of murdering a 9-year-old girl. Now, even after Karen the grandma leaves the room, you can hear her in the video screaming in the hallway that it will never be okay. Now, maybe her grandmother exited the room and then hearing her anguished cries encouraged Alyssa to start talking. But she told Rice that she used a kitchen knife. When she came back into the house, she put that knife into the sink and washed it. She also said that after Elizabeth was dead, she stabbed her in the chest what she thought was 2 times, but the autopsy actually revealed that Elizabeth had been stabbed a total of 8 times in the chest area. Now, Rice asked for another step-by-step timeline of the events that happened that day. Alyssa says that she got home from school around 3:30 and went into the forest around 5:30. She saw that Elizabeth was outside when she walked over to Elizabeth's house. Her sister Emma was with her for part of the way, but in her own words, she ditched her. While she and Elizabeth hung out by the creek, she decided then that she was going to kill the little girl. And she says she doesn't know why she killed Elizabeth. First, she says she came up behind Elizabeth, slashed her throat, and then stabbed her. But a few minutes later, that would change. That part of the story would change. She sticks to the story of burning Elizabeth and adds that she had scattered the remains in the creek. But Detective Rice tells her it's very hard to burn a body and asks if she really burned Elizabeth's body. To that, she replied no. But then she says that she pushed Elizabeth's body into the creek. Well, Rice isn't buying it, though, because he soon starts talking about that hole again. To put even more pressure on Alyssa, he asked if her grandpa, Gary, had helped her dig the hole. Well, she quickly says no. He didn't help her, and no one had. She tries telling Rice that she dug the hole with her knife, but again, he's not buying that either. Really, who would? And he calls her out on her. Even when threatened with a polygraph, she still says that no one helped her. Well, finally, little by little, the truth starts coming out. Alyssa had, in fact, dug that hole on Friday. She insisted that she had told no one about what she had done, including her boyfriend, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Now, during this entire interview, a juvenile advocate was in the room also, and she told Alyssa that the justice system treats those who tell the truth differently than those who lie. So Alyssa finally drops the part of the burning the body and totally opens up about what had happened that day. Alyssa blurts out that she slit her throat and strangled her. Now things are starting to make more sense. She strangled her with her own bare hands, then took the knife that was in the waistband of her pants and slit Elizabeth's throat and stabbed her chest. She says that she then buried Elizabeth's body. While still thinking that Alyssa had help, Rice asked Alyssa if Elizabeth's body is still out there, and she says, "I think so." And then Rice asked if she's still out there in the same spot, to which she answers, "I believe so." Now, maybe y'all, it's just me, but if you were acting alone in a crime, you would know that Elizabeth's body is still out there, where you left her in that grave that you said you dug all by yourself. Now, this still has me thinking that she either had an accomplice, or she's still just trying to play dumb in some of it. I don't know. But the question of why she had picked Elizabeth still remained. First, Alyssa says that she doesn't know why she picked the little girl. But then she says that she just wanted to know what it was like to kill someone. So it was a thrill kill. That wasn't the first person she had said something similar to. Her boyfriend had told investigators that Alyssa had asked him if he had ever wondered what it was like to kill someone. Well, when he answered no, the conversation ended. He also told investigators that he doesn't believe that Alyssa acted alone and she had to have had help. And not only that, he also admitted that he was afraid of Alyssa. He was afraid of what she might do if she found out that he had given authorities any information. Maybe she would come after his family. I mean, this boy was truly terrified of Alyssa. Now, near the end of the interview video, Alyssa agrees to go out into the area where she buried Elizabeth to help authorities locate her body. Now, in the walk, there's an audio recording of the walk through the woods, and Elizabeth repeats the story of what happened that day. Well, a few days after the autopsy, Elizabeth was laid to rest in a pink casket. And that pink casket had been transported to the cemetery by a horse-drawn carriage. Now, there were still inconsistencies in the accounts that she and the boyfriend had given authorities, and the boyfriend had told police the day after Elizabeth had disappeared, he had stayed home from school sick, and Alyssa had skipped school to hang out with him. Well, his mom came home between like 12:30 and 1. Now it's p.m. So he hid Alyssa in a closet and gave her some clothes to change into. Now, why? That's still unknown. Now, while the boyfriend's mom was taking a shower, he claims that Alyssa suddenly confessed to the murder. And at that point, he says he told her that she had to leave, and he let her out through the front door. He says that this was the last time he talked to Alyssa, but Alyssa swore up and down that she hadn't told one single soul about what had happened. Y'all, I am sorry. I don't know. It's early. Alyssa was charged with first-degree murder, and even though she confessed, she still entered a plea of not guilty. The following month, Alyssa was declared an adult because the crime she had committed was of adult nature. She was also placed in an adult jail because the circuit judge presiding over the case said that the juvenile facilities weren't equipped to handle someone who had committed a crime like she had committed. Well, the day before she was supposed to go to trial in January of 2012, she withdrew her not guilty plea. She agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of second-degree murder, and since she was pleading guilty, she waived her right to a trial by jury. There was one condition on that plea, though. She had to get up in front of the courtroom and tell everyone that was there the details of what had happened on that day that she murdered Elizabeth. The courtroom was filled with Elizabeth's family, Alyssa's family, and basically every member of the community. And when she spoke without any emotion in her voice at all. When it came time for sentencing, Alyssa's defense said that she didn't know that killing Elizabeth was wrong, and they talked about Alyssa's mental health. Now, it is true she had been diagnosed with major depression, anxiety disorder, PTSD from her horrific childhood, that's the only way I know to put it, borderline personality disorder, and she showed early signs of bipolar disorder. However, in interviews with mental health professionals who had treated Alyssa, they said that they didn't really think Alyssa would be capable of such a crime. But it was also one of these mental health professionals that told police in an interview that Alyssa did know the difference between right and wrong. In February of 2012, Alyssa was sentenced to life in prison. But y'all, this is not where this whole story ends. It just doesn't end here. Alyssa wouldn't have been eligible for parole until the year 2044. But Senate Bill 26 passed, and it says that if someone was convicted as a minor, they can ask for parole after serving only 15 years. Which means she could ask for parole in 2027, which is 5 years from now. She's serving her sentence at the Women's Eastern Missouri Reception Diagnostic and Correctional Center. But y'all, even then, Alyssa wasn't finished going through the court system. In 2017, Elizabeth's mom, Patty, sued Alyssa for wrongful death. They reached an agreement in July of 2017 where Alyssa would have to pay Patty $5 million. In the agreement, Patty agreed to drop any remaining counts, and Alyssa agreed to notify Patty if she receives any compensation that would come from any publicity about that case. And I think this is probably the longest episode I've done so far, and maybe one of the more graphic ones. But there were so many details to this case, I just couldn't leave anything out. And I have to admit that this episode has wiped me out spiritually, mentally, whatever. I'm going to need some meditation and relaxation after this one. That's it for today. I'm off to cleanse my spirit. Y'all have a good week, and don't forget to come back on Wednesday for the midweek mini.